I apologize for the tardy start. It's better to start when everyone's here. And it's really nice to see a healthy community come out tonight. Thank you all for coming. We'll wait just 1 minute. Where's Mike going for donuts?
Coffee.
Coffee.
But I told him he could go to the kitchen.
He was looking for a donut too. I'm gonna get a donut.
Where? Sorry, where's he in 10 minutes? Gonna be a coffee and a donut.
I don't know. Maybe he has a
Krispy Kreme.
Maybe he has.
While we're waiting for members to return, if there are citizens to be heard tonight, just like Kari is demonstrating for us, there are little blue forms that you can fill out and then hand to Rachel, the finance director, acting recorder / recorder. And are we live? Yes. So this would be a pre-meeting shout out to my son. Happy birthday.
You have a whole little house full of Pisces men, don't you?
Oh, I've got a house full of Pisces.
Mine are all Leos. Oh, both of my sons and my husband are Leos.
What's better, fish or lions?
Lions.
Thank you.
Well, for me, lions are.
Yeah, I think I prefer my fish. Okay. Today is February 26, 2019. We are now moving into our public meeting. It is 7:03 p.m. I call this meeting to order. Please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. We are on item number 3, approval of minutes. 3.1, approval of special meeting minutes of February 9, 2019. And 3.2, approval of regular council meeting minutes of February 12, 2019. Is there a motion?
I move to approve as written. I think Eve noted a couple of...
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Karen. Discussion? Mike, you had some discussion?
I saw an email letter, something to the effect that there was a couple of corrections that had been noted, and Eve said that she...
Yeah.
Mike, can you speak into the mic?
Certainly.
No.
So I move that we accept the minutes as corrected, perhaps I should say.
So you're amending your motion? Is that, and the second? I'm gonna move forward with that.
I'll second.
Thanks, Karen. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0. We're at item 4, mayor and council reports. So I'll go first. This time, 2 weeks ago, right before our meeting, we did have a promotional ceremony. The police department, Chief Winder, had a ceremony for our 3 new sergeants, Jerry Newmeyer, Jason Boots, and Aaron Woodard. It was a fantastic event. I want to thank you, Chief, for doing that for the sergeants, recognizing them, creating that ceremony, and inviting their families to celebrate with us. That was exceptional, and I very much appreciate it. And I wish Sergeant Tom Nixon a peaceful and fun retirement as he moves on. And thank you, Chief, for your leadership in the department. I attended Grand County Council's annual retreat to report on what we're doing with the city. And at that retreat, we discussed our commitment to working together. So it's easy to say, let's work together. It's harder to operationalize how you do it. But we specifically talked about land use planning And tonight, at our meeting tonight, the last item of the agenda is talking about our future land use plan. And the county council really wants to be in lockstep with us. So what that's going to mean for us is potentially making meetings outside of our own to be a part of their process, and in return, extending the invitation to them to be a part of ours. So that's one way that we can operationalize how we're going to work together in 2019. But otherwise, it was very beneficial to attend that retreat and to report back to them what we discussed at our retreat, and to see the ways in which we overlap. So certainly more to come on that. But I do want to report to all of you that council really does want to work together, enjoyed the joint meeting that we had, and wants to continue that collaboration as we are one valley. Then I got strep throat, and so I actually missed being in Salt Lake for legislative session Friday, and I also missed my first meeting of the Governor's Rural Partnership Board, but I had a follow-up meeting with Linda Gilmore, who is the state director for rural development. And I got some really interesting news from her that I wanted to share with you, that there's a bill that's being proposed. I know we've got legislative stuff on our agenda to talk about, but I did want to say that being on the board is affording me kind of a backdoor look at cool initiatives that are going to be coming from GOED, and that are really going to favor economic development in rural Utah. And so there's a bill, SB 200, Rural Economic Development Modifications, that is going to open up even more grant money for rural Utah to expand economic development practices in ways that we haven't seen before, with infrastructure, with business development, with business incubation, things like that, that I'm very excited to celebrate and utilize in Moab. And that's it from me, other than attending the LPC. But I didn't know, Ronnie, do you want to report?
Oh, no, go ahead.
Oh, okay. The LPC, the Legislative Policy Committee with the Utah League of Cities and Towns, had a meeting that several of us attended, where legislative items were discussed, and some of those, so we had a presentation from Representative Quinn, who reported on sales tax. More to come. I'll leave that for our legislative priorities, because we're kind of going to drill down on that one tonight. Also, SB 52, water metering and what that means. SB 129, this is the Tier 2 benefits, and it's a complicated one, and I actually spoke with Chief about it today to get a little more insight to the bill. Still left a little foggy, but the league's position was moved from opposing it to being neutral. What the league was saying is that, asking the state, well, don't tell us what to do and then don't provide the money to do it. But the league definitely agreed that while not having the money to do it from the state is a bummer, it certainly is an important thing to recognize those people that put their lives out there for us. And so that bill, SB 129, is kind of out there and neutral position, at least for ULCT. And then just a kind of a bigger overview that ULCT is tracking 316 bills of the whopping 1,401 bills that are at the state legislature. And so there's a whole list. We're going to go into more detail, so I don't think I'm going to say anything more about LPC, because I think we'll kind of get into more details of those bills later. Unless you want to add anything to that, Ronnie?
No.
Okay. And that's it from me.
Okay, I missed a week because I was in Washington, D.C. helping lobby for extra money for, or ongoing funds for the UMTRA project. So I'm trying to catch up on where all I've been, but I did go to the Dark Sky Open House this week, which was very interesting. I was on the Legislative Policy Committee webcast with the mayor yesterday, attended a meeting about CPACE, which probably now happened some time ago. I attended a very good program at Grand County High School for Youth Voices Speak Out, and I was just going to tell the council it featured some really great videos that middle school and high school students did on various subjects having to do with substance abuse and bullying and suicide prevention. And so I was thinking we might even as a city want to feature some of those on the city website. I mean, they're really good messages both for adults and youth. And the other main thing I did is on February 11th, I flew out to DC with Mary McGann from the County Council and Joette Langanese, who's a former County Council member, and they are both members of a subcommittee we call the Moab, I'm gonna get this wrong, Moab Tailings Project Steering Committee. Mary's the chair, and since 2017, we've been sending people back to DC to go visit the offices of representatives and senators in Utah, but then also in states downstream of Utah, so California, Arizona, and Nevada, who are along the Colorado River, to talk to them about our tailings project, site, and the reasons that it would behoove us all to make sure that enough funds are available to finish that project as soon as possible. And those include some health risks for downstream water users, but also risks and concerns for workers on site, and a lot of money that could be saved by doing this project sooner. So I will spare you guys a lot of details, but I have prepared a 2-page report for council members, and I'll just pass around. The printer didn't want to print my schedule, so I'll send you guys the one we actually use. We are going around, you can see the changes that happened. And but in a nutshell, we had meetings between the 12th and 14th of February, 17 separate meetings, because we were meeting sometimes with more than one person. We met with 30 individuals. Our meetings, as I mentioned, were the offices of relevant senators and representatives, but also the Department of Energy. So in total, we met with the offices of 6 senators, 2 each from California and Utah, and 1 each from Arizona and Nevada. The offices of 10 representatives impacted by the Colorado and these issues, 3 from Arizona, 2 from California, 2 from Nevada, and 3 from Utah. We had a meeting of the Department of Energy. The Office of Environmental Management is the one relevant to our UMTAR project. And we had a small coup because we managed to get a meeting with Ann White, who's the Assistant Secretary of Environmental Management. She brought 8 additional staff to the meeting, and we had a really good conversation. She's a fascinating woman who's been doing speeches and writing about the value of getting projects like this completed sooner than later, because she acknowledges the escalating costs that happen when they spread out over time, and also the risks that are involved. So that was a great meeting. I was just going to mention to council, we were able to meet with Senator Romney and Representative Curtis in person, and we met briefly Senator Feinstein and Representative Napolitano, but they weren't able to sit in on our meetings. The report I wrote will touch on the highlights of the meetings, what the steps are, I think, going forward, other observations from our meeting with Department of Energy. But generally, I should just say that the meetings went really well. Everyone was very professional and receptive and appreciative of the fact that we're either returning to their offices to fill them in on the project. Some of these people have visited the project years back, but at the same time, some of them are newbies to Washington and they had no idea about the project at all. So it was a good opportunity for them to be filled in. We had a whole presentation where we could orient people depending on where they were on their learning curve to the project and why things matter. For people who don't know, thanks to Mary's efforts to really put this project in the forefront of people's memory and just really keep pushing in the last few years, we've been able to get an additional $10 million for the project. So the budget basically went from $35 million to $45 million, and that's allowed us to rehire more than 20 people, double the amount of trains that are moving tailings up to Crescent Junction, shave $150 million off the project, as well as 7 years. So I will leave it at that, but obviously if people have questions, I'll pass this stuff around. And I thought you'd all like to know, if you're in Washington, D.C., the Utah delegation is great at setting you up to go visit the Senate and House and do other fun things. So, for example, you can go join Senator Mike Lee for Jell-O with the senator, and that's Wednesdays at the Russell Building. So, lots of fun things to do.
That's fun. Thank you, Ronnie. Mike, I was just saying you can scoot a little closer to me if you want to give
You won't
Ronnie
bite?
a little more room.
Okay, no.
Yeah, I don't bite.
Good. Yeah. No.
Today.
I had breakfast one morning with Terry Morris, who's on county council. As you guys know, we've been talking tonight earlier about possibly the city hiring a lobbyist to get into all the many issues that the folks up in Salt Lake are having a good time getting into Moab's affairs. And I want to thank Ronnie and Emily both, and Kaylin and other folks for, because I attended my first League of, what do you call it, LPC, legislative policy session kind of things. And it's kind of cool, you know, you can see it's nice to listen to folks talk, even if they are completely deluded once in a while. But anyway, it was a great thing, so thank you for introducing me to that. Dark skies, the East Center Street, the folks that live on Center Street, just east of 4th East, Mr. Reinhardt, before he left, commissioned a landmark company, their consultants, to meet with the residents up there and see what they could do to resolve some water and street problems and so forth up there. And they did present several alternatives, and all the residents seemed to be pleased with one design in particular, which basically would move the stormwater drainage underneath the road, which would allow them to widen out the road. A great thing up there. So that's kind of where that stands right at the moment. And finally, actually my most interesting meeting of the week was sitting on a park bench out in front of the library this very afternoon after another meeting, talking to a couple of homeless people, and just show you how privileged I am or isolated or something. But it was really great to talk to a couple of alcoholic men out there, talking quite honestly, I thought, and soberly. Because I was asking them, well, where do you guys go? You know, when the weather gets cold, where do you sleep? And so it's interesting to hear them talk. And I asked them, if Moab had a homeless shelter, would you use it? And the answer was yes. So that's a lot of emotional issues, obviously, for a lot of people. But I thought it was really good to touch bases with them, and it gives me more compassion and admiration for Sarah Melnikoff, all right, who kind of a one-man, one-woman organization for helping get these folks into places where they won't freeze to death during the wintertime. That's it.
Thank you, Mike.
I missed my meeting at HASU, and I missed my meeting at the museum board, but I had a lovely tour of urgent care at the hospital. That's all I've done.
Thanks, Tony.
I attended a Dark Sky open house. It was an opportunity to get to know the Dark Sky Committee and read the draft that is being presented to the Grand County Council and hopefully adopted by our council soon. Met with Moab Trails to discuss getting permission from the school district to use their property near the youth garden all the way to the new middle school for an opportunity for the community to hone and progress their mountain bike skills. And on safe structures that can be used for children and adults. And it would also be a great opportunity to beautify the woods near the creek. And it also makes it more visible and a functional spot to curtail kids going back there to get into some mischievous behavior. Grand County School District Board meeting. The school district is laying the foundation for safety protocols and procedures to unify children and families if our community is ever faced with a tragedy or a major event. You will hear more information about that this coming year. Jim Stocks, the director for CTE at the high school, went and presented to the House of Representatives on behalf of the high school to try to get funding for an addition for the CTE building so they can offer more programs for our children and potentially for adults. They were denied this year, but they have the foundation laid and they're gonna strike again next. I attended a USU Climate Adaptation Science program at the request of the mayor. It was an exchange between graduate PhD and PhD students, project partners like USGS, US Forest Service, and the National Parks Service. The program prepares graduate students for careers that integrate science with management and policy. And it was very eye-opening to see how many local programs we have with our federal agency and how they're addressing climate change through adaptive programs. And the effects on lands. And it's not just flora and fauna and soil adaptations, but it's also with particular attention to the cultural places that we and tribes in our community identify with. So I felt very dumb around these very smart young people, but it was a very cool experience. Yes.
Thanks, Karen.
I attended a solid waste special service district meeting, and we finally interviewed for a long vacant board position, and we're recommending to the county council Chad Harris, who's the environmental compliance officer out at Potash. He brings a lot of relevant professional experience to the board, presuming the county council appoints him, which they probably will. And also helped host the outdoor lighting open house that a couple of you have mentioned. So we had about 50 people come through, open house style format, so a lot of good conversations were had. And there's a fair amount of work leading up to that I can't say was a meeting, but took my time. That's what I've got.
Thanks, Kalen. We are now at 5 administrative reports. David, city manager.
Good evening. I have a few items to report to you. One is actually a question. There was the suggestion that we schedule a workshop specifically to discuss the PAD, the Planned Affordable Development stuff, and wanted to figure out if we could, if a date that would work for all of you here before the next meeting, right?
Yes.
So is that possible to do a workshop, a lunchtime workshop or an evening workshop in the next, within the next 2 weeks?
Let's pull out our calendars and schedule that. Do we have any blackout dates where Tracy cannot participate?
Not at this time.
Okay, so today is Tuesday, 26. Wednesday, Thursday, Friday this week might be a little soon for all of us. It certainly is for me, but looking at next week, what about Tuesday or Wednesday? What about Tuesday from, now are we thinking like we would do we'd all have lunch and then do a 1 to 3 style workshop?
I
think so.
Or a working lunch, you could do, like a 12 to 2. Or you could do, we'll provide lunch either way. If you want to have a late lunch.
What works
If that wasn't
best for you?
It doesn't matter. I'll make it work.
Right, is it easier?
Or do it in the evening, so.
Evenings are better, but if that doesn't work for everybody, that's not a problem.
Talking about Tuesday afternoon, 1 to 3.
1 to 3 or 5 to 7?
Evenings are more difficult for me, so 1 to 3 would be better for me.
Actually, I hate to veto, well, I'm not. I do have another commitment over there, singing songs for the old folks at the Care Center.
On Tuesday?
Yeah, on Tuesdays at 1 to 2, actually.
So what about Wednesday, 1 to 3?
Sure.
Does that not work for anybody?
That's okay.
Yeah, that works.
Wednesday, 1 to 3?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, and so then this also, we'll get it noticed through the formal channels, but then also noticing now that we will be discussing the Planned Affordable Development. This council, it's probably worth it to mention that this council has met with our housing specialist or special projects manager and made comments about our comments about the PAD. And so hopefully We were supposed to receive a report yesterday. Maybe we'll get one today or
Get one
soon
soon.
so that we can have some information prior to that meeting next week, Wednesday, with ample time to kind of do our own mini little workshops, I suppose, with ourselves and others. Okay. Thanks for
Okay,
helping schedule.
I'm just putting it in the calendar right now.
That March,
The 6th, right?
yeah.
March 6th.
Whoops, I didn't look at the actual date.
Okay, the second thing is something that just came up this afternoon and actually relates to an item that Karen brought up, which is the active transportation staff at the county is putting in for a grant for a bike skills park series of elements over at the 100 East, 100 South or 200 South intersection where the parkway has that T kind of by the creek behind Woody's, that area. So they've got a really cool plan in place and it's all good to go. The one question that came up today was, would the city be interested in helping to fund a bathroom being put in there? And I said, well, we had talked about it originally as part of our improvements at 100 East and 100 South, but we had taken it out in our deliberations just because it was fairly pricey. It was about $60,000 to put in a bathroom there, which it was about $50 to do the one at the Anonymous Park, at BMX Park. The grant application would probably require the city to put in an extra $30,000 instead of the $60,000. So it's an opportunity for us to do this. I told Maddie and Tyler that I'd check in with you all. Frankly, my first instinct was, I certainly couldn't commit to that, but I guess I'm asking for either a thumbs up, that's a great idea, leverage the grant to, get that done. I don't think we can commit at this time, or a thumbs down from you all if you think that's nothing you want to commit to at this point. So we'd be talking about a bathroom, probably very similar to the one at the BMX park there at that trail entrance at 100 East and the trail, Mill Creek Parkway.
Well, if we have grant money to pay for
half
of it.
potentially, yeah.
How does that affect the workload for our employees? Wouldn't we be responsible for
maintenance and operations? Yeah, it would be. We did add staff. You all approved an additional staff person to focus on bathrooms mid-year. So my expectation is we'd be able to handle coverage of this additional one.
Can you repeat how time sensitive is that?
Like tomorrow.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it would literally
So we can't wait to find out about sales tax, huh?
Right.
Right.
Right. So
This is first south, first east at the corner of the ball fields here?
no, it's where where First East dead end. If you're going south on First East, it dead ends into the trail there, and then goes up over the bridge, over where the A-frame used to be. So, yeah, and the city had originally looked at putting a bathroom in as part of our design when we're doing the green infrastructure there and redoing all of that area, but that fell out. This was over a year ago, just because it was a $60,000 addition. But 30.
How far is it from the MIC? Trying to think.
It would be 2 blocks. Yeah.
It's 2 blocks from an available restroom.
And
How does the proximity to the creek enter into that at all, or are there precautions that will be taken, or?
Well, it would be fully plumbed and electrified, so it would go into the sewer system. In that respect, there's an argument that maybe those who might use the creek area for a bathroom would use this facility instead.
Use the bathroom instead of the creek?
Right.
Okay. Yeah.
For the creek area,
Yeah.
I would say, yeah. I can see some advantages to it for sure. We talked about it before. It made sense as like a part of a trailhead development concept in that area. But again, I just wanted to take your pulse on that. If you're not feeling confident about it, that's fine. I told Maddie and Tyler I would certainly check in.
Similar opportunity likely to arise in the future? if we decide?
Well, this grant specifically will not fund only a bathroom, and Maddie told me. So it's an opportunity to wrap it into this larger grant opportunity. At this point, other than that, we would probably be on our own to fund the bathroom there in the future.
Well, and if we won the grant, but then decided we didn't want to move forward with the project, we'd just say no, thank you.
Conceivably, yes.
So I think I would be okay
I would
with
give you a
moving
thumbs
forward.
up
Okay.
as well.
That was my question.
2 plus mayor, 3, okay.
Okay.
Okay, great, thank you. And then the last item is a surprise. We have a surprise guest in the house. I'd like, if I may, Mayor, to invite Gary Duncan up to present to this council.
My name's Gary Duncan. I'm director of...
Gary, let's get you a mic.
Oh, do I have to?
Yes. Well, only because it's recorded and the public, yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Can I talk to them?
Yes, sure.
My name's Gary Duncan. I'm the director of a regional 25-year-old nonprofit dealing with natural building and environmental allergenics in the Tabawatch corridor, which is the triangle between Moab, Aspen, and Pagosa Springs, which we have discovered houses 250 straw bale structures, 26 of which are load-bearing, one of which is Montrose County Library in Natarita. The other one is a 6,000 square foot straw bale Montessori school in Carbondale. We live in a magical area for renewable building and energy conservation. And I've come tonight to make a Lifetime Achievement Award to your mayor as she leads community rebuilds. And the reason is this goes far beyond just the area around Moab and is on a national or an international scale, what this woman has contributed. I want to read to you a press release which went out to all of the media, most of whom are here today. This will just take a minute. It's only 4 paragraphs long, but it'll give you an idea of what the contribution of Emily Niehaus has been in the last 15 years. Emily Niehaus, currently mayor of Moab and now retiring as founder and director of Community Rebuilds, is presented with the Lifetime Achievement Award from the 25-year-old regional nonprofit research and advocacy organization in natural building and environmental health, Smart Shelter Network. Smart Shelter rarely grants awards, in fact only 3 to date, and only one of those on the level of lifetime achievement. We have represented and interfaced with the national and international activists in sustainable building for a quarter of a century. Not once in that time, and with those thousands of devoted contractors, building inspectors, bankers, insurance agents, straw bale, adobe, and earthship owners and builders have we even heard of, much less seen, someone actually bring into existence a community affordable, sustainable housing program utilizing the most advanced energy and building material technology afforded by adobe and straw bale, while at the same time assuring its finance and producing 36 homes with an international workforce which leaves here each year prepared to carry this precedent to their own communities. It isn't just that this, to our knowledge, has never been done before, but out of all these active in this movement, it's never in our knowledge even been conceived. Emily came to Smart Shelter 2 decades ago wanting advice regarding power lines, cell towers, and EMF health, with a hard-to-believe story about how she intended to scrape away the fringes of substandard Moab housing and replace it with owner-built state-of-the-art homes. In all our years, several hundred regional natural building case studies, tons of classes and workshops, and a non-stop line of well-intentioned idealists, have we ever encountered anyone who means what she says and backs it up with a track record, and a damned impressive one by anyone's standards? Someone a couple of years ago summed it up better by far than I could. They put it like this: don't ever tell Emily Niehaus no. So it is with very great pride and gratitude that today we present our 4th award in sustainable building and our second in lifetime achievement to this incredible lady who is now handing the helm of community rebuilds over to those who have come to follow in her footsteps and grasp the reins of Moab's mayor. We would be remiss indeed to let Emily's accomplishments and contributions to Moab, natural building, affordable housing, and community go without recognition. On behalf of the International Straw Bale Building Movement and all of those whose lives have been touched by her work and commitment to community, we grant Emily this Lifetime Achievement Award. And it says, it is with profound honor that Smart Shelter's quarter century of work in the Tabawatch corridor, supporting natural building and environmental allergenics, would witness the milestone of your contributions, bringing straw bale architecture into the mainstream of affordable housing, community support, administrative acceptance, owner responsibility, and global education through community rebuilds. Our work long ago established national recognition of this region hosting the highest per capita utilization of natural building in the United States, supported by Rocky Mountain Institute, Solar Energy International, Western Colorado Congress, Whole Life Network, National Renewable Energy Laboratory, Central California Permaculture Guild, Rainier Foundation, and the International Congress of Building Officials. Your work has carried these precedents far beyond what any of us involved would have hoped to see in this era. Those with similar long-term commitments to surmount the barriers you now understand only too well would be remiss not to pause here to assure you that you and those whose lives you have touched are very sure how appreciated and honored your contributions are. Truly the crowning accomplishments of a lifetime. We wish you that much more to follow.
That was a surprise.
We thought so. And I want to thank Dave for keeping it under the hats and the media for not running anything in advance. We have history and copies of the press release if you're interested in renewable building. I'll leave some on the back chair. Thank you.
Thanks, Gary. That's all.
Well, thank you very much. It is very exciting to move on, and I very much appreciate that. Moving right along, citizens to be heard. We're on section 6. I have one form. Are there any others? If there are, please bring them to Rachel. Kari?
Hello, my name is Kari Keeler, and I am the principal at Grand County Middle School. So I just wanted to say that Grand County Middle School is going to have a new building informational night, March 7th at 6 p.m. The architects will be there to give folks a view of the building and walk through the building and the new plans. And so if you can join us, that would be great. And it's also a meet and greet to meet me, so you don't have to meet me now. That's it. Thank you.
Thanks, Kari. Any other citizens to be heard? We'll move on to 7, presentations. Very excited about presenting. 7-1, presentation of the Mayor's Student Citizenship of the Month Award, the Grand County Middle School for February 2019. So, Ansha and Tyler, please come and join me. No? Well, then here's what we're going to do. Come on around here. We'll just do this. Okay. This is really special because I've known you since you were in your mom's belly, and you hung out with Oscar at summer camp year after year, and you've been a mentor to him. So, whereas the staff and faculty of Grand County Middle School on a monthly basis select a student of the month based on the student's citizenship and their involvement with the, here, we'll just hold this. Whoa, maybe we'll just direct it up. Their involvement within their school. And Whereas it is the desire of the city of Moab to foster and recognize the contributions of the young people of this community in regards to good citizenship. Now, therefore, the city of Moab joins with the Grand County Middle School in recognizing Ansha Thomas and Tyler Mullins as an outstanding student, a positive role model, and a shining example for our community. Therefore, I, Emily S. Niehaus, Mayor of the City of Moab, do hereby proclaim them as the 7th and 8th grade Student of the Month for February 2019. And I do also have a pin for you for the city, so you can wear just like this. And really, you're both outstanding. Thank you so much. Kari, is there is some, come on up and let's share. Here, why don't you guys stand together?
Okay, so Tyler is the 7th grade Student of the Month. Tyler is the son of David and Stephanie Mullins, and Tyler's teachers say of him, he has many characteristics that make him an excellent choice. He is hardworking, asks questions, is involved in school activities, is a leader among his peers, and is motivated. Tyler can be counted on to help his peers in class and always try his best. Tyler says of himself, do you want to read that? No. I was born in Lexington, Kentucky. I also lived in Michigan for 7 years. I love to play basketball, explore, and go to new places, and I have a cat named Lulu. And Anya, did I say that? I always want to say Ansha. Anya says, her teachers say of her, she displays a number of traits that when combined create a terrific student and person. She is polite and reliable. She appears very calm. Her work in class and her participation make her an outstanding member of the class and a role model. She is very conscientious in all she does. Her work is done to the best of her ability at all times. She asks questions if she does not understand, and her work is detail-oriented and complete. She was an integral part of the varsity quiz bowl team this school year, and she lives life based on strong principles. Ansha says of herself, I like to bake and I am vegan. I am allergic to gluten. I love to read and spend time with my goats. I also like to go to the mountains and to California. These are our students of the month. Congratulations, both of you and parents. And one more presentation, 7-2, the Moab Area Travel Council, Sustainable Tourism. Elaine, we've got a presentation from you. Thank you, students of the month and parents. Hi, Elaine.
Hi, thank you very much. Welcome.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you. I'd sent a PowerPoint.
Oh, let's pull it a little bit closer to you. There you go.
Elaine Gisler, and I'm the Executive Director of the Moab Area Travel Council under Grand County, and reporting to Ruth Dillon. And what I want to present to you today is a direction of where the Travel Council is going. I think a lot of the perception is that all we do is run ads on KSL, but we do a whole lot more than that. What we're doing is we created 3 new focus categories moving forward. We started on the project last year, but it's education, sustainability, and accessibility. And just a little bit, I want to touch on education. These are just a few of the things that we've designed: a new Stay on the Trail badge patch. We're hoping to do more with that. We collaborated with the Canyonlands Natural History Association to update the 20-year-old movie about Moab, which does, we collaborated with the parks, all the land agencies. And then we just created the Moab Outdoor Adventure Guide online that if you see that, you'll see it has all just a lot of information about trails, hiking, biking, educational, sustainability, and just everything that we would advise people to do when coming here. We also had a new biking video and the new UTV educational video that's online.
That TV's not on. Hold on just one second,
sure.
Elaine. That TV's not on. This one here for the council's working. That one's working, but just to help some of you be able to see better. There we go. I apologize for interrupting.
That's okay. So that's just a little update on education, and we're continuing to work on that daily. I decided that sustainability really needed to be part of what we're doing, tourism sustainability, and what the Travel Council does. So we have been partnering with Rosemarie Rousseau from the city, and of course supported the plastic bag, no plastic bags in Moab by creating, which I had distributed tonight, a reusable bag that we are giving away to all the tourists. We drop them off at all the hotels, all the bed and breakfasts and businesses, so that visitors coming into town would, you know, if they want to run to the grocery store or go out to purchase something, they would be able to have an available bag. So we just created that, and we also created a sustainable tourism page on the Discover Moab website. So if you go there, you're going to see a lot of the things that we're working with Rosemarie on. We put up there not only about the plastic bags but we've also put up there the electric charging stations and all of the many things that we're trying to focus on. So the real reason I'm here is to talk about Moab First Sustainable Tourism Task Force. And I will be going to the city preparing a document, a resolution, and what I'm hoping it to be is a joint resolution for the city and the county to support the Moab First Sustainable Tourism Task Force. And what we'd like to do is establish and implement this so that it encompasses every business, everyone in the county. So what you're doing in Moab, I hope to expand with the help of Rosemarie and the city, bring that to the county council and create a task force where we are involving all the businesses and the public to really start working on a 20-year long-term program on tourism sustainability. And what I'm hoping that it will do, it will actually encompass environmental, economic, social, cultural, quality, health, safety, and to be developed with public participation. I happened to take a course, the GSTC course, which is the Global Sustainable Tourism Council, and I think, David, I think you were familiar, you went up to Jackson or something, and but anyway, I took the course with them, got my certificate last year, and we're moving forward. So the criteria that they have through the GSTC is rather broad, but the task force, I hope, will be able to take this criteria and be able to bring it into perspective for what would suit Grand County and Moab. And that's what this task force would be working on. We would be working on developing a multi-year destination strategy, monitoring a public report, and a response for the public, tourism seasonality management. There's a list here of all the things that we would be targeting. So it would mean bringing a large group together on a regular basis in order to approach how we can help sustain what we have here for many years to come for others to enjoy. So I will, if you approve and if you agree that it is something that the city would like to do, then I will prepare the joint resolution, and I would love to come back and present that to the city officially. So that's that one. And the last point that we're working also on accessibility, because our area is very fortunate to have partnerships with the National Ability Center, which used to be SPLOR, My department is working with the National Ability Center. We're also working with the Telluride Adaptive Program, and we're working with a couple of other organizations, and we're going to be doing some filming in May so that we'll be able to show that people who need accessibility can come to Moab. We're not just extreme biking and extreme hiking, but that people that have real disabilities or the military that have PTSD, that they can come here and they can have an amazing experience in Moab with these organizations. So we're going to be filming and showing the world that people that come here that need accessibility can come here and enjoy the outdoors just like any other individual. So that's it. Any questions?
No, thank you for that presentation. It sounds like you're going to bring the resolution for us to consider, so that'll be something that we'll put on our agenda for consideration.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you.
Yeah, and if we do have follow-up questions, we could probably just email you.
Absolutely. Yes,
Okay.
or if you need more information, I'll be more than happy to provide that. Thank you for your time. I appreciate it. Congratulations on your award.
Still blushing. Thank you. Thank you, Elaine, for that. Okay, we're moving on to Section 8, Special Events. 8.1, approval of permit for the 2019 Red Rock Four-Wheelers Big Saturday Parade to be held on Saturday, April 20th, 2019. Is there a motion?
I move to approve the Red Rock Four-Wheelers Big Saturday Parade.
Second.
Thank you, Kaylin. Thank you, Tawny. Any discussion?
My understanding is the event has existed since, I think, was it 1965? So the only reason we're looking at it is there is a change because now we have the, what am I trying to say, law enforcement fees or the police-related fees. But otherwise, yeah, it would have just gone through. So it's just that change.
That's right.
So David, I was puzzled, and I think Carmela answered the question for me, thanks to her. But level two, the bigger events, level 2 events, do have to come in front of us for approval? Is that the deal? And the little guys don't? Is that?
If they meet certain criteria, they come to you, yes. Like a change in
Number of participants.
number of participants, right? The change in scope in projects, or in events. But if they are the same as the year before, even if it's level 2, they don't have to come necessarily to the council.
And I want to point out that we last year knew that we were going to charge the fees that are accurately associated with events. But in line with that, we were also going to create a sponsorship. And so I am told that the Red Rock Four-Wheelers have applied for the sponsor to potentially offset that cost for the event. So I just wanted to point that out too, that they have applied, and that while it is a large fee that they have not been paying over the years, that is the way that we have restructured that fee program. So any further discussion? I'll call for the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes 5-0. 8.2, request for amplified music at Lions Park. Is there a motion?
I move to approve allowing amplified music at Lions Park.
Thank you, Karen. Is there a second?
Second.
Thanks, Kaylin. Discussion. I just want to thank the bride and groom-to-be for choosing Lions Park as their venue, and encourage all people that are looking to do events in Moab to consider Lions Park. It's beautiful. It's a great facility, and it's a good park to utilize for events, especially those that have amplified music, as we are discussing tonight.
Is the bride or groom here tonight, or the prospective bride and groom? Are they?
Doesn't look like it.
Doesn't look like it.
Any further discussion? Call for the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes 5-0. Old business. 9.1, state legislative agenda update and discussion regarding lobbying efforts. Let's try to get through this efficiently. So I met with Joel, and we made a list of the bills at the legislature that affect us as a city, at least directly. I'd like to go through each one of those bills with this council and just kind of get a consensus moving forward with action, if any, around the bills, and then give you each an opportunity to mention any bills that are not on this list that you're following for us all to consider. And then we're going to discuss the hiring of a lobbyist, the potential hiring of a lobbyist. So first things first, sales tax bill. Number one, it's not been published yet. It's not been set out. Yes. Has it been?
Slight update. Some details have been released. There were a couple of news articles about it while you were in the closed session earlier.
Oh boy.
Would you like me
yes,
to
please.
talk about those briefly, or Joel? Okay.
Well, actually, we were going to have Rachel talk about, but go ahead. Yeah.
Oh yeah, right. Do that. That's right. You have a presentation-ish.
Go ahead. Updates first.
Yeah, I'll do the update real quick, and then we can get into the background. But
actually, even before update, so just so everybody's on the same page.
Yeah.
The proposed bill expands the base, so looks for more industry to tax, and then lowers the actual sales tax amount. So it's like instead of buying a car, you Uber, you don't get taxed. Buying a car, you do. The state recognizes that there are things not getting taxed, especially with new populations emerging in the economic world, so in the money spending world. That is why it's why it's happening. And the attempt is that by broadening the base and lowering the sales tax, that everyone will be revenue neutral. Mm-hmm. But we're concerned because 100% of our revenue for the city is sales tax. And fees. Sales tax and fees, our revenue.
Not 100%,
Oh.
but I'll build on that in the presentation.
And the fact that we don't have property tax, that we do not charge property tax as a city, is why this is so important to us. So I just wanted to say that.
Great. So, yeah. I mean, really, the actual bill language has not been fully released, but they updated to say the update is that as far as what has been discussed thus far, the effect on the city's ability to collect sales tax at the rate it currently collects it at is not affected. So that's a positive thing. Does that make sense?
Revenue neutral for the city then?
It looks thus far that in terms of the city's, so the state levies a sales tax that it collects for state stuff, right? The cities then get to levy sales tax that they keep for city stuff, but half of what the cities, the sales tax that is for the cities actually gets sent back to the state and then redistributed based on the 50-50 formulation, 50% population, 50% point of sale. That, as far as I can tell, is not affected thus far, which is a really positive thing.
The 50-50.
Correct.
Correct.
Yeah.
So what it would do is lower the sales tax rate that the state collects for itself without affecting what the cities can collect for themselves.
For the 50-50.
Correct.
That's the local 1% we're talking about. Is that correct?
But just to build on that, so I had a conversation with Roger too this morning at the Utah League of Cities and Towns, who also worked for the Tax Commission. And unless that has changed since I talked to Roger, it can affect our resort community and our highway tax, in addition to the 50-50 split on the 1%. So when they're talking about lowering the overall rate going down could affect resort community and highway tax, in addition to our local option. That's what Roger told me this morning, because I said, hold on, let's make sure I'm understanding that. Right. We won't know until the bill's released.
So was there a 75-25 change on the table at one point, and that was what triggered a lot of concern?
Yes.
Definitely changing the 50-50 triggered a lot of concern. And generally, expanding the tax base is a good idea because, it's capturing revenue that wouldn't otherwise be captured. But again, the concern is that if the argument is that we broaden the tax base and then reduce the sales tax, and that the idea that that'll be revenue, in Moab, broadening of the tax base, we don't have we may not have a whole lot to capture.
So can I
Yeah.
speak to that in the
Yeah.
presentation? And when I spoke to Roger this morning, that's probably part of the update that you got. He said that 50/50 is off the table. So they're not going to, his understanding in the bill is it will not touch the 50/50. The problem that we have, just to kind of go back to our tax structure and just for the council and for the public, we don't have a property tax. So the majority of our general fund revenue is generated by taxes and fees. The taxes that could be affected by this bill, once we actually get the text of the bill, would be the local option sales tax, which is 1% on all taxable sales, with the exceptions of non-prepared food. The 50/50 split that David was referring to, we keep 50%, the other 50% is split out statewide, and then we get a residual amount back on population. We have a 0.3% highway tax and a 1.6% resort community tax that could also be affected by this bill.
Rachel, before you go on, may I ask one quick question?
Yep.
The 50/50 split, you just described 50, half of it goes to the state, and this area gets to keep the remaining 50% period, or is there a population number?
There's a formula that they use based on permanent population to divide out the other 50%.
That was a subject of some debate about how much it factored in, so.
But according to Roger, and I guess what David had heard as well, the 50/50 split is off the table as far as changing that.
So far.
So there's a formula, but it hasn't changed.
But the bill hasn't been released.
A lot of sausage making yet to happen, however.
So those are the three taxes that could be affected by this bill.
So the TRT is not on the...
TRT is not, because it is an add-on tax. So I was very specific with Roger on that. And it is an add-on tax. It is not considered a sales tax. Because TRT is a pretty big chunk of our revenue as well. So that's kind of the picture for this current fiscal year. What we have budgeted for the sales tax is just our 1%, which we get 50% of. Highway tax, resort community tax, and that shows the percentage it is of the total taxes that are budgeted for the general fund. So about 72% of our taxes in the general fund could be affected by this bill. Those of you that attended the LPC meeting, and the mayor just summarized that what the bill purportedly is going to do, because we haven't seen it, is going to expand the base of what would be considered taxable to include all services. Basically, anything that you would be paying for as a service would then be subject to sales tax. Subscription services, professional services. Roger gave me a list today of what they're speculating would be included, but until they see the bill, they don't know. He did say that if this passes, that we will be the first in the nation to test this, for better or for worse. The idea is they would increase the revenue by increasing the taxable base, but at the same time, they would be lowering the percentage rate of sales tax. In the LPC meeting, they talked about that would potentially have a positive effect for those in lower income brackets, because their sales tax would go down. As the base broadens, then the revenue, they're trying to remain revenue neutral, but basically what they're proposing is doing something called a lockbox, where they will collect those funds the first year until they see how much it actually generates. There's really no way to know how much it's going to generate, because the services they want to broaden the tax to aren't being captured right now. So they just don't know how much revenue it will generate. The bill sponsor is Tim Quinn, who's the vice chair of the House. And at the meeting on Monday, he said that the draft bill is 244 pages. So as soon as we can get that in our hand.
That's going to be quite the read.
I thought 224 was complicated, yeah. But that's another story.
He said that it may contain formulas to hold small cities harmless, and they just don't know at this point how much it could generate. The idea was to have it be impact neutral as well, but as Roger too pointed out, that's kind of hard to do. Looking at Moab's taxable sales by sector, our taxable sales, 79% of those taxable sales can be attributed as being tourism related. The complicating factor there is it's hard to estimate how much of that is permanent population, but when you look at just the numbers of our visitation versus our permanent population, can kind of extrapolate that out. This is the information that was available on the state tax commission website. It represents 3.75 years, 2015 through third quarter 2018. That was the most available that they had. Blue, and this is specific to Moab City. Anything highlighted in blue there is related back to the tourism population, and orange is not. So when you look at the big picture of our taxable sales coming through the community, it's 80% attributed to the tourism base. That's just
That was
kind
a
of
really
the
good pie
numbers.
chart.
Thank you. Want me to go back to that?
No, I know Karen loves pie charts.
Okay. That's the data behind it.
Yeah.
And then basically what Roger said and what they kind of said in the LPC meeting is that there are 17 resort communities that will be significantly impacted by this legislation if it goes through. Larger communities like Salt Lake and along the Wasatch Front stand to gain because as they broaden that base, there's a much bigger market up there that will be contributing into that new sales tax, where smaller communities stand to lose. And then just kind of what's next. The league is definitely representing our interests and concerns. Roger said that Senator Hinkins is the biggest opponent to the bill thus far, and staying in contact with other municipalities, which I don't know if Joel wants to talk to about who he's spoken to on the issue.
We were getting blown up by a lot of other communities that were reaching out saying, are you guys watching this? Are you aware what they're talking about? So a lot of the communities, other municipalities are really banding together right now to keep each other informed and pass information on because everyone's extremely nervous about it.
So any change in that sales tax rate could have a significant impact on our general fund revenue. It's a very serious proposition.
So, first of all, thank you. That was an awesome presentation and really helpful. I think it's complicated, but that was really helpful to understand how that's going to impact us. And it also makes me feel really good to know that you're on top of it, and we have a finance director that's going to really, looking at the projection and in tune. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
What can we do as a council? So I think in terms of what our action is with this item, it's going to get put out in front of us. It's 244 pages. I guess my question is, who's going to read it, synthesize whether or not it's good or bad for us, and then we as a council have a responsibility to respond with a letter, and then also with contacting our legislators in various ways. So I guess the question is, who's going to digest 244 pages and summarize? Joel. Well, just so that we're really clear, so that it doesn't, huh?
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Did you say Mike?
No,
Oh, because you were going to? No,
One quick question. So in the newspapers in Salt Lake a couple, 3 weeks ago, when we started, there was big headlines, $150 million sales tax cut was advertised out of Salt Lake. So I'm guessing then that cut isn't really a revenue cut in a certain sense, but is that $150 million a direct result of if the base wasn't broadened and because they're lowering the sales tax rate, the $150 million is what the state would lose, but they're going to make up for it with the increased base. Is that the idea?
I didn't see the article, but talking to Roger today, it has been very low key, very subterranean. Since the bill hasn't been released yet, I don't know.
Right, that number, I believe Mike was referring to updated revenue estimates for the state for their budgeting process, separate from this endeavor.
I don't think this has been out in the public eye because the draft bill doesn't, it hasn't been released.
The reason why I'm so aware of it is because of serving on the board of League of Cities and Towns, and for us,
Emily.
LPC, well, listening to LPC, they've been talking about it for like 3 weeks now, right? 4 weeks. So it seems like Joel's going to read it and kind of in our court, and then also the league is going to come out with a statement, and I'm sure they're going to respond specifically to resort communities, because that is a conversation that has been had on the board. So my recommendation is that we hear from Joel, we hear from the league, we draft a letter, we sign it, and then we get active in reaching out. Unless it's like great, then we'll be like, yay. But in the event that it's going to hurt our community's revenue, we should stand ready to action.
And it seems like this will affect Park City as well, and they're significantly more staffed than we are. So I wonder if there might be some opportunities to collaborate there.
Yeah, we could definitely check in with them and the other resort communities that are looking at it as well. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, if you all feel good about that, we can agree to doing that and keep moving down the list. It's good to know all that information. Thank you, Rachel. Again, SB 34 is the housing bill. It has passed in the Senate, and it's on to the House. And again, it is the bill that a lot of people have been talking about. And to summarize, cities are required to have a plan and address at least, 2 of the items on the list to address housing affordability. And if they don't, they could be set to lose transportation funds. So for us in rural Utah, it's not as big of an impact. It's definitely, weighted toward the Wasatch Front, but it's a nice bill to support as it's a housing bill and that's being considered by legislators. So I don't know that there's any action for us to take as a council other than reaching out to legislators and sharing support.
But I would like to note, didn't we hit like almost all the points?
Yeah.
Yes. So that was very impressive.
Yeah. Too bad they don't give gold stars in the form of like $500,000. Maybe that's an amendment we could propose. Or that's something that we could work on, some legislation for next year that really is specific to rural Utah and housing.
Or we get immunity from other bills if we do extra on housing.
Extra credit.
Free card, yeah.
The next one, Karen, this one's for you. These two. This one's for you, and you'll get the joke. HB 46 and SB 132. So HB 46 allows 8-year-olds to serve alcohol. Would allow 8-year-olds to serve alcohol. So we have a lot of servers that are under 21. It's complicated in our restaurants to be able to.
8-year-olds?
18.
Or 18.
Did I say
you
age?
said age.
And I was like, how is this for me? How is this for
funny?
me?
I do that. I drop tens. I don't know why I do that. I said 8-year-olds can now serve. The paper's laughing. Nate, don't. 18-year-olds.
I was going to say that does not sound like our legislature at all.
You can run a red light now, so you don't know.
Okay, so 18-year-olds can now serve alcohol, and so we know that a lot of servers are under the age of 21, and it causes congestion and not as good customer service. So that is a bill that's proposed, HB 46. The other one is SB 132, which would increase the limit to 6%. So no more 3-2 beer.
I thought you meant blood alcohol content.
Huh?
Yeah. I thought you meant blood alcohol content.
Yeah, no, not blood alcohol, not the driving, in the can, the percentage of alcohol. And then what that would mean also is that vendors and stores would have an easier way of stocking. It sounds like Budweiser doesn't want to make 3-2 beer anymore.
Nobody does.
Us and Wisconsin. We're the last two. Wisconsin? Is that right? Or Minnesota?
I think it was Minnesota.
Yeah. Well, Minnesota has Schlitz, right? Isn't that like 3-2 beer?
Wisconsin has the rest.
Lower beer too. Like the brewery states always had the lower beer as well, which makes no sense.
Yeah. So this bill would actually increase that. So I don't know if we as a council want to get behind that one either, but it's good to know because it does, as we are a resort community, have some impact to our businesses. That would certainly give them an easier way of going about
They interviewed one of the legislators this morning on NPR about this bill, and he's opposing it because 6% beer is the gateway to having wine in the grocery stores.
That's Fillmore.
No, is that a problem?
It's a gateway beverage. It is.
It's a gateway beverage.
Wow, that's interesting.
We're a gateway community, so that.
We are a gateway community. Okay, the next set, these are a couple of ATV bills that have been proposed. HB 105, it's a reciprocity bill. Kaylin, maybe you can explain it a little better than I can. ATVs coming from outside of Utah have other license plates than inside of Utah, in our state. And so the reciprocity, this law would say.
So I haven't read it in a couple weeks, so I'll just say what I read then. And it specifically refers not to the license plates for street legal ATVs, but for the little tags that they get for off-road operation.
Right, right.
And so currently there's reciprocity with other states. This bill would do away with that so that out-of-state operators, when they came in state, would have to buy this little tag, and it's just a retail transaction at there's a number of places in town that they do that. So it would basically make money, and then other states that offer reciprocity to Utah might then change their laws. And so
would that be taxed? Would that be a service that would be taxed with this?
Oh, I don't know if that would be taxed, but it would certainly be a little bit of revenue to the state.
Yeah.
Car license.
So that's the first one, and then the second one is SB 44, which actually provides ATVs, UTVs more road access than they already have. Those are two bills that, if you're interested in ATV and UTV use, that to check those out. The next one, but I don't think this council has any action behind those bills. The next one is the bag ban, HB 320. So last night it was heard in committee and passed favorably in committee. Essentially, this bill would make it not allowable for cities to ban plastic bags. There is, as we've seen with this plastic bag ban, lots of flavors to this conversation, but we as a council passed a ban, and we stand committed to standing by our interest at the legislature. And so I know that we've been reaching out, but I think that at this point we should formalize our efforts and draft a letter and then reach out again and make sure that the legislators hear that we are against this bill and why. And I think in that letter we can also reference the heavy lift that our vendor partners have done in our community, and just like we've heard with our travel council creating bags on their own, that the community is behind this effort. I think we need to get that letter written and distribute it. I want to know if we've got a volunteer to write that letter. I'm a bad writer, but I'm a really good networker, so I'm happy to put it in people's hands and get the conversation going.
I'll write it.
Thank you. And then feel free to reach out to Brendan for a quote, maybe, or I don't know, for some letter flavor, okay, and others that you see.
Did Brendan actually end up talking to McKee?
He did. He called. He called Representative McKee. Yeah.
So are we planning as a council to have representation when this hits the floor so that we can speak up against it? Because I've been told
I'll be there Friday.
That's really important. Yeah, we don't want this going to the Senate. Okay.
And if anybody else wants to go Friday, I think it's good. I have a place to stay in Salt Lake, so it's not really much of a dime for the city for me to be there. Should we keep going? Kaylin, you put out, and Ronnie, you were talking about SB 111, energy storage. You want to speak to that?
Oh, no, I put out a different one, so I'll bring that up if you don't.
Yeah, I don't know about 111 either.
The only I have two others before we get into other bills that you all have. One is HB 31. It's a water it's a bill about water. I actually got very concerned because it was talking about water out of jurisdiction. I sent the question to Chris. Does this affect us? I just want to give you a chance
I guess
to respond.
the short answer is, first off, the bill's dependent on certain amendments to the Utah Constitution being enacted, so it's sort of it's a companion to a joint House resolution that's pending. The main thing that it does is municipalities routinely charge different culinary water rates for service outside their city limits. They charge people outside city limits a higher rate typically. And what the bill does is it prohibits that practice. It allows some differentiation in rate setting for culinary water service based on cost of service and so forth, but it doesn't allow municipalities to draw that kind of bright line. What it says is you have to establish a service boundary, which includes people, customers that are outside of municipal limits, and then you have to engage in a rate setting process that treats those people outside city limits the same, essentially. So one thing that it does do is it undercuts the municipality's sovereignty in the sense that, you know, you as a city council, you have rate setting functions, and it says that it sets guardrails, essentially the things that you can and can't do when you do your rate setting process. So that's one thing that you may be concerned about. Whether it's earth shattering or it's going to completely upend the rate setting process, I would say no. But on the other hand, it's another one of these mandates that sort of chips away incrementally at the discretion of local governments to legislate as they see fit. So.
Thank you, Chris, for that description. And it just leads me to, you know, say, I know we're going to be talking about lobbying efforts, but that we definitely don't have anybody looking at all of the bills on the city of Moab's behalf and saying, ooh, that one could actually affect you. As we all share the value of both quality and quantity of water for our community and our access to it, you know, it's worth to say, well, maybe we should have somebody other than me seeing a drop of a bill and wondering, have somebody more combing through the proposed bills on our behalf. But thank you for your timely response in that bill, Chris, because when I did read it, I got very concerned that it would affect our control over that. And then the final cluster of bills, HB 161 and 151. Karen, you might support these two. They would allow, 151 would allow cars and 161 would allow bikes if stopped at a red light to treat it like a stop sign. If nobody was coming, at a certain period, you could proceed.
It's much safer.
So if you support either of those, that might be something that you'd be interested in looking into. But I don't think, again, that that's action for this council. So what other bills do we have?
HB 411, the Community Renewable Energy Act. I haven't had time to review it, but it looks very interesting. I think Rosemarie, and perhaps in consultation with her counterparts in Salt Lake City and Park City, should review it and let us know what they think. Okay. It looks like it might be geared towards some of the work that those communities upstate are doing as far as having developing a large community solar array, or working with Rocky Mountain Power to build them dedicated renewable capacity to meet their community's needs, and then have, say, opt-out billing. And I think it may have to do with the terms of that, possibly. So I think it's worth having Rosemarie, or at least talk to the sustainability directors in those other communities and find out what's up.
David, is that something that there's capacity to do.
Exactly what?
To at least talk to the sustainability director in Park City and find out what's up with HB 411.
Sure.
And
Basically,
report back to us.
if Rosemary could network about HB 411,
Sure.
just to see. Okay. All right, and then maybe she could come to us with proposed action from the council.
Yeah,
if
and
any.
I mean, given the pace of things, I think that might be like an email tomorrow.
Yeah, 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 this is all super quick. Anything else?
Nope.
Any bills? Ronnie?
Yeah, I have a bunch. Unfortunately, this is one that has passed, and so our only recourse now is to contact the governor. This is House Bill 220, the radioactive waste amendments. It basically does two things. It removes the requirement that state regulators consider the unique nature of depleted uranium, which will exceed Class C waste standards, and it also removes the statewide ban on Class B and C waste and instead places this decision in the hands of a single person, which is the director of the Division of Waste Management and Radiation Control. I think especially as a community that's been impacted by uranium over time, but given all of the effort that we're having to put into and that the nation's having to put into the cleanup at the UMTRA site, it behooves us. I don't know why we weren't consulted as a community that knows a lot about this, about the impacts of this, but I really think it's something that council should consider writing the governor about. I can go into more detail, but one of the things to be concerned about is with depleted uranium is unlike the half-life of radiation that we're dealing with here that degreases over time, one of the unique things about depleted uranium is toxicity increases with time. And so I'm just going to quote an article in the BYU paper, The Daily Universe, basically noting that it increases at 14 times the level of radioactivity at its peak from the time it's first stored. So there are a lot of concerns that we don't know quite what we're dealing with, and we would be bringing this in from out of state. I think one of the articles I read said from Ohio, so it also is impacting all those communities things come through, and I know people know when we considered the UMTRA waste, the fact that it even went from here up to Crescent Junction was a safety concern, and we had those discussions about whether to do that by truck or by rail, but this is crossing multiple states, and we're basically changing our minds on what we said as a state about not accepting this to all of a sudden saying, yes, we'll accept it and we'll transport across state. And I don't think it's responsible in the long term to even, I mean, it's great, it will create some jobs in the short term, but I don't think anybody is taking into account the full weight of committing to take that on. So I feel very strongly that that's something we should write.
Do you want to write the letter and then
that's fine.
Present it to us to sign?
Yeah. I haven't had a chance to look at it. Mary McGann suggested that we look at House Bill 259, which is about straight ticket voting, and it has bipartisan support. So I haven't had a chance to look at that one, but it's one that might interest people. Two of the other ones I wrote you about are of concern having to do with health and safety issues, and those are, let me find my numbers here. House Bill 399, which is the prohibition of the practice of conversion therapy on minors. So for people who don't know, conversion therapy is a practice that tries to fix, change, or alter or repair a person's sexual orientation. It's been shown to be basically, I mean, there's nothing to it scientifically. And there was a study done last year that shows kids subjected to the therapy have 2 times the normal rate of depression and 3 times the rate suicide. So the whole intention of banning this practice for minors, and it would basically, the bill would be limited to not allowing state licensed therapists to engage in conversion therapy for minors, is both to help protect kids from a fraudulent practice and save lives. Some of the quotes I read said, the state has a responsibility to end or prohibit harmful medical practices. If we know something will harm a child, we need to intervene. And I feel strongly about that one as well. And I did send you guys all an email with some articles and the bills earlier. And another one I would support.
Oh, wait, hold on one second. So action for that. I don't know that we as a city would support it, but if you want to put a bill together, or I'm sorry, a letter together, you might not only just generate signatures from this council, but maybe signatures from our community as well.
Yeah, I mean, this is hard because we're all on such a time
Yeah.
constraint for
Yeah.
how and when these are going to hit the floor and when they move. So I'm just bringing them up because I think they're important, especially given some of the recent history in our community. But just some concerns that have been here in Utah over time. The other one is Senate Bill 103, the victim targeting enhancements, which passed through Senate committee unanimously already. What it does is enhances penalties. So, for example, it allows longer jail sentences for victims targeted because of who they are. The whole sense of hate crimes is when one occurs, it affects two people, not just the individual attack, but the entire community that they belong to by spreading fear. And, you know, that group could be anything, and this bill covers these from the more conventional ones considered by the FBI as hate crimes, covering your race, religion, sexual orientation, gender identity, or disability, but also adds to that list first responders, law enforcement, military personnel, and people associated with particular schools. That one I didn't quite understand, but I'm sure there's some history there. So basically, attorneys have said that the current legislation we have doesn't have sufficient teeth. We ostensibly have a hate crimes statute on the books, but in 20 years, and hate crimes are on the rise, and we haven't seen a conviction. And so this would basically give them more tools and provide teeth. So that's that one.
Okay. And again, do you think that's action for this council, or just it's more information?
I mean, I can, if anybody, people can just email me if they're interested in signing a letter. I can write one, and otherwise individually.
Okay.
Yeah, I sent you guys articles and links.
Thank you. Thank you, Ronnie. Any other bills? Okay, well then, just to finish this conversation, the topic of lobbying, I think this council, correct me if I'm wrong, is definitely interested in pursuing having a lobbyist that is going to follow not only what happens during the legislative session, but works on our behalf in the interim to put forward things that are important to us. So I think we want to move forward with direction to you, David, to pursue a, and let me let you all speak to this as well, because we're just now less than 3 weeks away from the end of the legislative session. Are we thinking a lobbyist now that could be following stuff right now? Are we thinking this is a future action?
I guess a basic starting question, is it possible to even get someone short term, and what does that cost? And or could we piggyback on someone else's who's already supporting a community with similar concerns? Or?
Well, those are good questions. I think we are kind of looking at a more longer term.
I think we are too.
And that we're going to use the resources we have to finish this legislative session.
I mean, we know the important work has to happen in the interim, so yeah, we can start looking now. And
yeah,
we'll certainly put a placeholder in the budget for it.
Yeah, and put the word out that we'd like to have somebody working on our behalf for all these things.
Yeah, and Mayor, I submit that I do think the county would be very much interested in sharing expenses and lobbying efforts with us because they have similar interest.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so that takes us, I think, to the end of 9-1, old business. So we're moving into 10, new business. 10-1, proposed resolution 16, 2019, adopting a City of Moab business license fee schedule, briefing and possible action. Chantel and Cody, welcome. Cody, please introduce yourself. So that we are all familiar with who you are.
Happy to do so. Cody Dieter, I own EFG Consulting, which stands for Energy, Finance, and Government. I actually grew up in LaSalle, over the hill, so it's wonderful to be in southeastern Utah.
So are you gonna move back?
I would love to move back, but just keep me busy, and I'll move back.
All right.
forgive me.
Got to get broadband to LaSalle.
Yes, indeed, which is something I've been trying to work on for many years.
There's a bill, actually, that would propose money for that sort of thing, so maybe we'll get your story, bring you home.
Which would be wonderful. Okay.
So the city hired, we contracted out with Cody to go through a process to figure out what our justification for fees for business licenses specifically should be. That's what he's here to present about.
Thanks, David. And thank you for doing that so that we can have a fact-based, non-biased conversation about fees.
Yeah, and just maybe a little more about my background. Sorry, I was trying to get things connected and can't think and talk at the same time. So I've been working in the municipal finance industry for the last 15 years. So providing long-term strategies for local governments in terms of finance, including issuance of debt, water and sewer rates, economic development strategies, anything related to finance and local government except auditing and accounting. I'm not smart enough to know debits and credits, so that's my background. I also do a significant amount of solar, renewable energy finance, helping local governments and now corporations and others finding ways to finance renewables. So with that, as David mentioned, I was asked to prepare an analysis on business license fees. And so I'd like to just share some information with you about what the purpose of a business license fee, what it is you can and can't do, and have a discussion about what the results are at this point. So the first question is, what is the purpose of a business license fee? And just give some general overview of government funds and how they work.
Thank you, Rachel.
The first thing I'll share is that you have two types of funds at the city. You have governmental funds and enterprise funds. Governmental funds are like your general fund, and they are what I call inefficient. And what I mean by that is the link between the dollars and the services provided, i.e. sales tax and police service, those have no real link, right? You're collecting sales tax from someone buying a drink that has really nothing to do with the service that's being provided by the city. So it's inefficient in that link. But enterprise funds are extremely efficient. So everyone pays their water and sewer bill. The way you figure out what your water and sewer bill is, how much does it cost us to get the water from the ground or wherever it is into this person's home. There's a very strong link between the service and the fee. So the business license fee, the intent is to introduce some of that efficiency into the general fund, right? To try to make a link between what you're charging someone and the service that's being provided. Does that generally make sense, what we're talking about there?
Sure.
Yep. So what can you charge? What are you allowed to charge? There is a statutory, there's a whole statute that talks about this on the Utah Code 10-1203. It talks about that a base fee, it can be charged to basically, this is a quote, recover the municipality's costs of regulation. So you're allowed to regulate businesses. You've gone through a significant process to update your business license code. This then says you can charge a fee to recover the costs of regulating those businesses. You can also charge a disproportionate fee, which basically means if a business provides a bigger burden upon the city than a normal otherwise business on average provides, then you can charge extra for that. So a very common charge for that would be if there's more police calls, for example, to a certain type of business than the general business, you can charge an additional fee for that.
Assuming we're not restricted by the legislature.
Yes, there are certain restrictions for food trucks, for example.
Yeah.
Which is...
I got to tell you, Cody, the word disproportionate threw me for a loop. Why don't they call it proportionate cost? That would make a lot more sense.
You know the legislative process like I do. That's what it's called in the code. Yep. Yep. I'll never answer why a legislature does what it does. So here's the general methodology that I followed to, that we as a consultant and also in conjunction with the city followed to generate the base fee first. We developed process maps What that means is Chantel and I and others in the city sat down and said, okay, when someone walks in the door and they want to get a business license, what do they do? And how much time does it take? So we went through all the steps of every person who has to touch that and how long it takes, so we could see a map that showed from step A all the way to step C or D or whatever it is, and how much time that takes, and then allocated the costs of each of those staff members, both their direct and their allocated costs, so we could figure out based on the time they use how much that costs the city, and then that's the basis of the fee. Other fees that can be charged are disproportionate fees, and that's again based on call volume. We were not able to extract that data from dispatch at this point to develop that disproportionate fee, although we'll continue to work on that so we can have a disproportionate fee. So we're only talking today about the base fee. So another thing I'll mention is that there is something allowed in the code called a good landlord program. Very often when you develop a disproportionate fee, long-term rental for residential apartments have a disproportionate fee because there are a lot of police calls there. And so many cities have a good landlord program which allows that fee to be waived if the landlord comes and does the training annually. That helps them understand who they're renting to and why, and doing background checks. And so that's a component that we will talk about in the future.
One quick question for you, Cody.
Sure.
Cost based on staff time. In the aerospace business, we had two categories of labor costs. One was unburdened, one was burdened. You know what I mean by burden and unburdened? I'm not sure. So which is it in this case?
It's burdens. So we're talking about the actual full cost with benefits and overhead.
Overhead costs and the whole 9 yards.
How much it costs to turn on the heat in the building and the computers that you're using, so the full burdened cost.
So as I recall in the aerospace business, it was something like 2.5 to 3. I mean, as a ratio of unburdened cost, something like that. Is that similar sorts of things?
We can look at the actual numbers, but we'll work with Rachel to figure out what those actual costs for benefits and then the overhead.
Yeah, it's substantial. I mean, I guess that's what I'm...
Yeah, it's meaningful. Yes, definitely meaningful. So here's an example of the base fee for general business, for just the general business category. So the city treasurer approves the application or provides the application. It's 15 minutes. Reviews the completed application once it comes back. It goes to city planning. They review that it takes about 15 minutes to make sure they're in compliance with the zoning. It goes to Moab Valley Fire for the fire inspection. That's not city funded, so that's not collected. The health department, they also in many cases have to have the health department inspection. Again, that's not city funded, so we don't charge a fee for that. And then the building inspection, generally that's a 30-minute item. So that's the process map of everything that happens for just a general business license, the steps that they go through. And then moving to the next level, what are those expense categories that we looked at? The hourly rate of the individual, the benefits, the health insurance, the building allocation, and then the support allocation, which is generally computers, IT, those types of things. So putting those two slides together, what does it cost for a general business license? Those are the costs. It's like $99 for a general business license based on that time allocation and the expense allocation. So then we can look at all of those the same methodology for all the types of business fee categories. You can see on the far right in the yellow box, we rounded these up to the nearest dollar or to the closest dollar. So you can see the general or the fee for each of the categories. Any questions on any of those?
They're all in our packet, and I think we do have questions, but let's get to the end of the presentation
Sure.
so that we can deliberate.
Absolutely.
If that's okay. Thank you.
So this is the base fee for all business types, and then there's an annual renewal. So that would be the first time a business comes in, they would pay that fee, and then every year for a renewal, they would pay this fee to renew their license, which is basically the city treasurer's time to renew that fee. So in terms of next steps moving forward, the recommendation is to adopt the base fee that you have before you or modify it as you see fit. we will also receive data, as we mentioned before, to do a disproportionate fee from call volume, including a per room fee for hotels, which we think would be a good idea, and then finalize the Good Landlord program. So that's the end of my presentation.
So tonight we're looking at the base fees, and then future would be the proposed disproportionate, and then future would be the Good Landlord, correct? Okay, thank you so much. That was a really nice presentation, and this council did have time to review your information also in the packet. So, gosh, I don't know if I should call for a motion or if we should have some deliberation. And I don't know if you guys don't mind staying here as we discuss. Let's just kind of throw out our thoughts. Let's do that.
I just have a quick question. This one's really easy. Will existing businesses that we've already licensed, will we charge them that initial fee the first year that we do this, or will they just be charged that renewal fee? I thought it was easy.
My response recommendation would be the renewal fee.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because they've already charged, they've already done if they don't have to do the building inspection and all that again, I don't know how you could justify it unless you felt like you should go and do that again.
Okay.
I made that assumption, so thanks for asking that question.
I never assume.
So with the special event fees, I know that they were just changed and raised a couple, like 2 years ago. Is that correct? I'm just curious, the justification for this high of a fee for, so is the small is under 200 people? And then is the large 201 and above? Is that correct?
I believe that's the case, isn't it?
Yeah, so we did a special events process map, actually with Carmela, and she provided the data for that, and it looks like there we go. Yes, so I believe that the fees are the 200 and the 400 now for the license, and these will be the new ones.
So for renewable events, are they going to be paying? Because you're just basically reviewing the question of just like a business license, the event, like if events have run for years, like the Red Rock four-wheelers, are they going to be charged that every year, even though it's just
It's a little different than a regular business license renewal because the committee still meets and still goes through their analysis and process to make sure that they're meeting the requirements of the event. So it's ironically maybe special events are a lot more staff intensive than other. It's not really even a license; it's a permit, right?
Right.
It was part of this analysis. The special event permitting process is still pretty labor intensive, even though it might not come to the council for approval. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but I've heard from staff that it gets easier. I mean, when you're in year 10 or year 15, it's not the same staff requirement. So
it's true, but it's also worth noting these are averages too. For some events, it's going to be a much shorter, quicker process. For other events, it's going to take a much longer time, but we can't really drill down that much more than trying to make it an average across the span of all the events that come to the city.
Are you advocating, Karen, for a reduction in fee for a repeat event?
Yes.
Do you have a recommendation? Like a 20% discount?
It seems like it would be something. I mean, it would also be great to be able to. I mean, I'm advocating because we have put on events, but to be able to, make that process easier online. So.
Yeah. Oh, make it easier online, yeah.
Which would reduce,
Some of that processing.
yes.
Potentially. Well, let's ask the council real quick. How do folks feel about that? Keep it as is, or agree with Karen?
If I may, I would like to consider that. Before we do so, if I may ask Chantel, maybe you could give us a little, I appreciate the nifty little chart, not quite this one, but the one that shows little colored charts. I don't know if you got that in front of you. It's easy to read. Well, it's the same deal, I guess. Okay, so so how much of the price has changed? I mean, if I got the impression that some of the base fees have gone up substantially, which is what Karen is talking about now. But is it true that the renewal fees have gone down in general, or I mean, how have things changed as a result of this analysis?
So we went from a lot of different fee types down to about 10. They're all licenses except for the special events and these street performers. Those are both permits. In terms of general business, most of the general business went from $90 to $99. Some general business was paying $45. The vendor went from $960 a year down to $214. We have never had renewal fees before. So even though you were renewing a license every year, you were paying the full price every single year. So this is the first time we've ever had a renewal fee here at the city.
Which I applaud you guys on. I mean, it just shows efficiency, which is what, we're hoping to see. So I really appreciate seeing that. But I was wondering if it's, with events, if it's I mean, David's saying it is as burdensome every year, but I would tend to disagree with that. So putting that out there.
So again, I'm just curious what your proposal would be for a new fee.
Well, we do have event sponsorships. We allocate a significant amount of money towards that. So I feel like I'd prefer to have the accounting of the fee amount be reflective of the staff time, and then we've budgeted to offset that because we want to encourage events.
For a lot of those events.
That's a good point. That's a good point. Well, in light of that, Karen, do you still want to advocate for it, or?
Yes, I would like to advocate for that.
Karen?
But I mean, Carmela is the one who deals with this the most. I mean, it would, it would be, potentially a conversation with her
Well, now that I know that's your question, I can probably get some feedback for you, but I don't have a better answer for you right now.
Okay.
Well, one thing that brings me to want to comment on is like incentivizing certain things. So like we have through fees or a reduction in fees, an opportunity to incentivize certain things. So while street performer may be like, oh, I don't even know what that is in Moab anymore. Maybe that's because it's $106 to be able to just like stand on the, in a place and play your guitar and put out a guitar case. Coming from a family of musicians and also enjoying, street performers and buskers, I was wondering if we would want to reduce that fee, knowing what the actual cost is, to incentivize street performers to play in the public areas in our city. Because I think, what is the current fee for a street performer?
It is $10.
It's $10. So I would be inclined to keep that at $10, but I appreciate the cost analysis of that.
Would it be worth at least knowing why it costs a little more than it, because it does, for instance, the treasurer's time is a little more, or do you care? Maybe,
I definitely care that, I know that the work is being put into it. That's why I prefaced it with like incentivizing.
I'd like to know why it's more.
And just making sure that.
Okay.
May I
It sounds like you want Chantel to answer that question
Yes.
that I didn't ask, but go ahead.
So the street performer permits do require a lot of our time. There's a lot of information in the code about what requires a permit for that versus what does not. It does take a lot of time to explain, and we usually are sending a lot of emails back and forth. Also, it does require city manager approval. It used to require city council approval. We did just recently change that in October so that they wouldn't have to come to city council for those permits. And Cody's going to show you the process map for the street performer, just so that you can get an idea for that specific license, what is required.
So you go to the treasurer, the city manager approves.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think I'm okay with keeping that fee at $10, but that's my comment.
So if I may ask, Chantel, we did a lot of this in my years in business. So take city treasurer, 15 minutes. I'm not pointing any fingers at anybody, but here's what, whenever I did this kind of thing, let's put it that way, and somebody asked, well, Mike, how long does it take you to do this and that? And I would cut it up in little small tasks, just like you've done. Oh, 15 minutes to do this, 15 minutes to do that. But in practice, oftentimes what happens is it all kind of runs together. And do I actually end up spending 45 minutes total, typically doing these things? Sometimes. What actually happens is for many people, it takes a lot less than that. And then an occasional one comes in that takes you way longer than you think. That's what happens. So if fees keep, and I think they have, David, maybe you can correct me if I'm wrong, we've been making an effort to charge what things really cost, including all the burden costs and so forth. So the residents have seen, and businesses have seen their fees increase substantially, and that's kind of a bite, kind of hard to take. And they may well think that, gee, guys, we already got sales taxes, we're already paying you guys plenty of taxes, why are you nailing me for every penny? So there's something of that sentiment in there, particularly in activities that businesses think are particularly beneficial to the community and so forth. So all that factors into the question of whether we should discount to some fashion some of these.
I will say that we've been working on the business license fee analysis for about a year with Cody, so I'm very aware in what with each type of license or permit that I'm doing, how much time it takes me, because I've had the opportunity to think about it over this time period. So I wouldn't say that that these minutes are too far off on each one. We spend a lot of time with customer service in helping people figure out what type of license, do they need a license, helping them fill out each license, whether that's contacting the Multicultural Center and helping with those kinds of situations. So we do provide, a lot of services for each type of license.
Okay, thank you.
I guess what Mike is, it kind of comes down to customer service too. It would be like me at the bike shop saying, okay, somebody is calling to rent a bike. Now this bike rental is not $65 because I had to take the phone call to talk about what kind of bikes we had, and then I had to write down. It's difficult because it's part of. I know municipalities are different. It's the cost of doing business, and so we could raise our rates to $150, but does that make sense? There's part of doing.
That's exactly why I went through this study, though, was to show you exactly what the cost of doing business is. And if you all decide to, subsidize that through other tax revenues, that's totally your decision. Really, the point of this is essentially the maximum you can justify charging people for licenses. So it's totally a policy decision. If you want to incentivize certain types of licenses or subsidize them, it's totally yours to do for sure. But we're basically required by the state to show why we can charge what we charge. So.
Well, and we haven't yet talked about nightly rentals versus long-term rentals. So I would like to, I don't know why it sounds like we just want to charge people less, but going into long-term rentals, I have stated before and would like to just state now and again to all of you that I don't want to get into a position where we disincentivize long-term rentals, nor do I want to put that added fee onto a landlord that's then going to pass it on to their renter. And so, again, in the knowing what the actual time is to do the work and not, discrediting the analysis or the work that's being done, but just strictly from a, not disincentivizing long-term rentals. I would also support the idea of not charging $116 for long-term rentals, but reducing that down to $10.
So
Yeah.
I would rather wait until we have the Good Landlord program before us so we can assess the benefits of doing that license at all, rather than setting the fee now. I don't feel like this is burdensome. I am a landlord, and $26 a year is nothing. I'm going to charge market rate, basically. It's going to depend on who I'm competing with. I don't calculate it. I mean, I calculate break even and profit, but it's what I charge is based on what I think I can charge, because I'm not in the affordable housing business. I'm just a rational economic agent.
David, can we just spend a little time sorry, did I cut you off? Go ahead.
Yes,
Okay.
I was, in my motion, I was going to say rentals long-term, 3 or more per lot, because I think that should stay in place for like apartment buildings or trailer parks, which are more businesses rather than, say, an ADU in someone's side yard or a single-family home.
So
that
2
someone
or less
owns.
would be excluded
Yes.
from getting a long-term rental business license.
At this time, until we have the Good Landlord program in front of us, at which time I'd like to reconsider that.
Yeah,
I support that.
And that is a subject for a future meeting, is it not?
Oh, yes.
Okay, and all the, whatever costs, I saw where inspections may or may not come around, and, so I don't think we can really set these costs, right, maximum cost, I'll call it right now. And I agree with you, Caitlin. I would be more comfortable if we had a better handle on what a long-term business license entails and to whom it applies. A lot of people out there are confused about, they think, if I live, that anybody who rents a room is going to be tagged with this, and that's not the case. And so we need to, because I don't think it's going to be the case, to get all that settled before I think we can really set this fee.
Okay, so what
David,
other comments?
Well, yeah, can we take a minute just because we did get a lot of emails and I think a lot of people have the same questions, and can we just address some of those? Like one of the questions people had is like, is there currently a license required? If I'm a landlord and I rent out my house or whatever.
Currently, there is a license required if you rent out 2 or more units, is my understanding. Yes, that's been the long-standing approach for the city. It's what we don't have is a place where we can really point to where it says that's what is our rule. So we're fixing that. Okay. But that does not apply to someone who owns a house, lives in that house, and rents out rooms.
Okay.
Would not apply.
I know, like one of the more complicated questions we got, like, well, I rent out my basement. It's not an ADU. It's connected to the house, but it has a separate entrance. I mean, how complicated does it get, or do we know at this point?
Well, that's a good question.
That's not 2 units. So I guess
that'll be a policy question for you all to grapple with at some point when we do drill down into licensing onesies and twosies, as it were, for renters. Is a ADU something that should get a license? Is it about property? Is it about being in the same building? Is it about being on the same parcel? Is it about adjacency? I mean, if part of the goal of licensing 1 and 2 units, two type dwellings, is to ensure that you have somebody who's someone who is responsible for those properties. Thank you.
Accountability for
Accountable. That was the word.
Right. Landlords. It's
Accountable.
landlord
If
accountability.
they were accountable, then the notion of somebody being on site maybe accomplishes that goal without needing to have that license. So, those are questions we'll grapple with in the future. But for the time being, for now, that a license is not required for that.
So then, just to really be specific, Kaylin, yours is 3 or more?
On a lot.
On a lot.
Yes.
So if somebody owns 4 different houses in 4 different parts of town and rents all 4 of those out, they still don't need a license?
No. Okay. I mean, that's what I came up with to kind of address it on the fly.
Great.
Because
I don't want to set those terms tonight. Those kinds of criteria. But the criteria by which you need a license, that's a subject for another meeting. That's my opinion anyway.
You prefer just to strike the long-term rental fee?
I would just as soon strike this from the thing here, or put a to be determined TBD in there. Can you do that? And we will soon resolve this.
What does the rest of the council feel? Keep it at 3 or more, or strike it?
So in that case, like an apartment complex would not require a business license. That doesn't seem ideal to me.
Oh. Okay. Thanks, Tani. Karen, Ronnie, what do you think?
I have some much more basic questions around this.
Well, let's try to answer this just because I think that would at least get us somewhere here.
I would be in favor of holding off on a fee for now, but I'm working on this concept of size that you guys are talking about. I had to think about it a little bit.
What about you, Karen?
Yeah, I would prefer to wait till we have the good landlord program.
Well, that's not going to be in place for a year.
I have to say the good landlord program, that's a big deal. And I really would like to have people that are renting homes come into City Hall and fill out a piece of paper and say, I'm renting a home, and here's my name and my contact number, so that if there are issues and Mona receives a complaint, then she has easy follow through.
I think that was the goal when we were having this discussion, and when you brought it up that it potentially could be like a $10
and so
fee.
if we're gonna look at good landlord later, that's why I'm saying what if we just charge $10, they come in, they fill out the form, and then we can work on good landlord. And then if somebody's renting long term, at least we have them registered, and then we can move forward later. I guess that's what I was gonna.
I'm just curious, how do you guys know who is?
Do we know how many long-term rentals we have?
Yeah, I'm sorry. How do we know the long-term rental market out there right now?
So as of right now, we have been licensing long-term rentals if you have 2 or more. So, we have quite a few of those licenses. On occasion, there have been some that didn't have a business license, and when notified, they came right in and obtained a business license for those.
But how do you find out who has a long-term rental? I'm just curious.
It's probably self-reporting, or it's probably self-reporting.
How would you
somebody
contact
comes
people?
in and signs up for a utility account, they purchase a new place, if it's a new apartment complex, if it's a new condo, and we get information about that, and we are like, oh, you have 3 now, you will need a license. So those are different. There's a lot of different variables.
Can I ask a question? Chantel, are there many situations you know of where people, kind of like the scenario I was proposing, where somebody might have 3 or 4 different individual single-family dwellings that they own, and do you find that people are getting licenses for that, or is that just not really happening much?
For 4 separate long-term, not on the same parcel, or not on
Correct, not on the same parcel.
Most people do have licenses.
Okay.
So here's what I think we need to do, because it is 9:09 and we've got to get to our future land use plan. So this council needs to make a decision. So what's before us is adopting this fee schedule. Kalen put out his idea, but it sounds like the majority of the council really just wants to exclude rentals long-term from the approval of fees right now.
I do want to get really clear because I think it's important with part of our
So
idea.
what I was going to say actually is just that we could put that particular thing on our agenda for next time.
But my question is related to that and procrastination. Like, was the whole idea behind a big part of this idea for having a rental fee that it was part of our way to deal with our code enforcement issues and the fact that we thought that that was going to be our reaction? So if we think that now that that's not the right fix, what is our path moving forward with that? I mean, are we...
Well, then let me put forward my suggestion, which is rentals long-term, $10, and then we start telling the community, you need to come in and get a license. It's only $10, and then we have a database of who's at least renting, and then we can, while we investigate good landlord. That's my suggestion. So it wouldn't be to do it for 3 or more. It wouldn't be to strike it out, but it would be, if you have a long-term rental, it's going to be $10. File it at City Hall.
And just so you know, currently right now they do require inspection signatures for the long-term rentals.
And I would suggest that we waive that it's literally just register it at the hall.
Wait, Emily, Mayor, I move that we defer the discussion. It's complicated, all right, because most people, I certainly feel that if you've got a house, you got a few rooms rented out, or you rented it to people that you know next door, there's situations where well, if you live in a house where you're renting rooms, I don't think that a license should be required, because the whole idea of trying to expand that was to guarantee accountability from a household point of view. Remember all the business about households and occupancy and all that kind of good stuff? So there's a question in my mind about to whom exactly what kind of rentals require a LTR license at all.
If you have a roommate and you're renting, or you have 4 or 5, or you're renting your rooms out and you live there, you are not required to have a long-term business license at this time, nor was it proposed.
Okay.
So this is for absent. So it's a landlord that doesn't live in a unit.
Okay. If the landlord doesn't live there, if a landlord doesn't live in a house and he has one separate property that he's renting out, currently he would not be required to have a license at all either, right? Because you got to have 2 or more.
Correct.
But that, in my opinion, is perhaps a loophole, all right? Because if that's a common situation, it's something we may wish.
So going back to your suggestion, I'm wondering about either having like a short period of sign up, since it'll be a new thing for this community, and then phase in the actual cost at some time, and we agree that like it has enough value that we're willing to subsidize it for all the people that have been doing it for years and didn't know or have only one. And also, one thing that I think would be valuable to landlords is if, as part of this, basically registering so that the city knows who they are, if there's a police response or civil code complaints, that the landlords get notified. Because as it is, a tenant is actually has a form of temporary ownership of the property, and the landlord may not be notified anyway. And so if that's acceptable, that would be of value to people for getting a business license, if that was part of the deal, that they would get that notification.
Well, and hopefully the deal too, like if somebody comes in to get their license, we could also provide them a one-pager that says, here are the, here's some rules that you should be aware of that, landlords are required to adhere to with renters. So, so then what do you think? Then what are you thinking? Are you changing?
What are those rules? Who's going to draft those? I mean, we can't just come up with some ad hoc rules to give to people.
Oh, no, it would be like state law stuff. Like state laws pertaining to being a renter.
That's not what you said. Here are some rules.
Well, educating people about what the rules are, is that what you're...
Yeah. If there are state law and
I should have said
code.
laws, not rules. Yeah, laws and code, yes.
So, I mean, but what is it, what would you put on there? That your front lawn has to be clean? I'm just...
Well,
Yeah, here's the city codes.
Yeah, here's city code.
Here's what your rights are as a landlord and as a tenant. It's basically like kind of a couple of steps down the good landlord road, but some pretty basic information, and maybe just some code references. And the city, we have why are we doing the licensing? Maybe a rationale about that, and not a justification, but an explanation for the expectation of the responsibilities of a landlord.
Well, right now, I agree with Emily. I don't want to disincentivize people from providing housing of any kind, affordable or otherwise. Part of what we were trying to accomplish was to get a handle on what people were calling bunk houses, because there didn't seem to be anybody there that was responsible for the behavior or for the condition of the home. I don't think that I don't know if $10 is going to be, I don't know if it's enough, if it's too little for those people to take it seriously. I want them to take it seriously. But on the other hand, I don't want to penalize people who have been good landlords for years.
How's this for a suggestion? I mean, we could make a motion to pass this resolution without the long-term rental fee, and we can think about it for 2 weeks and come back and discuss that aspect of it. But one thing you could do is start an educational program where you do require people to come in and fill out that paperwork and say, I'm tied to this property, I rent it. I think already there's certain situations where you have to say you don't rent it over as an overnight rental. And you spend a lot of good quality time educating the public. Like, we're trying to make some effort here to do more education, to educate landlords about, how to be a responsible landlord, and we recognize a lot of you are just great and bending over backwards, and we recognize some of you could use some more education. Start it free, but let people know, like, if we see, because I honestly feel like if there's one fee on this list that we should be subsidizing given our housing crisis, it's this one. Yeah. But if we see a problem with just people blowing it off, I mean, we can start charging for it over time. But if you want to do the educational component, then at least do that, but make it free for people, and then it puts that much more pressure on the people who are bad landlords. They've had their opportunity to be educated, so they need to own it when they don't take responsibility. Another thing you can do is you can take your code enforcement and you can say, okay, we say we're a complaint-driven city, but that isn't entirely true, because we do some active and not passive monitoring of illegal overnight rentals. So we could decide, let's actively start looking for a few other key things that we think are on top of the list. I mean, just really bad, there are probably things that are really bad that would fit into specific definitions of really bad health or fire risk, or you can throw the lack of landscaping on there if you want. It just has to be, we know it has to be done across the board, or the overflowing trash cans, or whatever you want to put on this, but we could decide what those things are and figure out what kind of staffing it would need and decide if that's our priority. But I mean, part of our idea here was to respond to community requests for taking code enforcement seriously. So we do owe it to people to do something. I don't think this fee is the right approach.
I have an idea.
We could also.
Hold on, I have an idea. What if somebody who's been renting is self-reporting and coming into the treasurer's office and says, I've been renting, I have a rental, a long-term rental, and they would be charged the renewal fee, and they would not be subject to the inspection, but then after, a certain expiration or whatever, if people don't come in and self-report, then it goes to this initial fee.
I think initially charging in the renewal fee is a good idea, because it's $10 is kind of.
It's a little.
It's kind of a little, yeah.
26 is.
But 26 is that. But another thing that we could do is we could start everybody out at that at a lower fee. And if we have complaints, if the police are called to that property a lot, if we have reported complaints to code enforcement that there are junker cars or the lawns, you know, if we have the kind of complaints that we have now, then those fees can increase yearly if they don't.
So you're going to fine them. That's what it amounts to.
Well, they'd either be fined or they'd lose their license and their ability to rent.
I know, but that's not what we're trying to accomplish, especially in this community.
Yeah.
And I mean, we just bought a $1.7 million piece of property to help with affordable housing, and now we're trying to, people who have the housing, we're trying to charge them to provide the housing. It seems very backwards.
But we also had people tell us that they wanted us to monitor some of those rentals.
So I think we do. You come in and you sign up. I think that
the sign up.
Yeah, because that's helping know who is in charge or who is the owner, who's responsible for that house. There's, you know, I mean, it's also, this is a protection for renters as well. I mean, if they're living in deplorable situations, and I mean, you can't dismiss that part. I mean, it's not just for the landlords; it's for tenants. So, but I really, having the fee, we're trying to make up all these tools to help with affordable housing, and then we're adding fees. I'm not comfortable with it.
Yeah, maybe there's a compromise here. Maybe we just keep the code the way it is now. Three units or more get tagged, the usual thing, the 116 plus the renewal fee that we're talking about. Which, in other words, we keep on doing with the revised rates what you're doing now, Chantel. Okay, but everybody else who does not fall into that category can just come in and sign up, and that's really what we want. We need a place for the neighbors to go to, somebody to take responsibility without penalizing them financially for the behavior of their tenants from a bunkhouse point of view. Does that make any sense?
So you're saying require a business license, don't charge a fee?
No.
Oh.
No, require a business license, just like we do now, of people with 3 units or more, okay, as you've been doing, apparently. But for everybody else, you know, somebody who has one house, and even if they don't live in there, forgo the fee, because it's not a revenue.
That's what I mean.
Yeah, exactly.
For less than 3,
okay,
require the license, don't charge the fee.
Well, okay, yeah. If they have to fill out a piece of paper when they come in. Well, yeah, I guess it's the same thing. You're correct. Okay.
So I think this needs more work. So I move to adopt the resolution 16-209, a new City of Moab business license fee schedule, striking rentals long-term and directing staff to bring us back some ideas for how to deal with our concerns about rentals long-term at our next regular meeting.
Thank you, Kaylin. Is there a second?
A second.
Thank you, Tani. I think that's very graceful and valuable. Deliberation? Call for the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes 5-0. And we are on to 10-2, proposed ordinance 2019-08, amending municipal code, chapter 5.67, nightly rental business licensing, briefing and possible action. Chantel.
Okay. So in implementing the new short-term business licensing that we are in preparation of, we did find just a couple of different things that we needed to take out or modify in the nightly rental license, section 5.67. And one of those being that for an individual owner who may have more than one nightly rental, that they can add up to 4 of their nightly rentals onto one application. They will need to attach an inspection sheet for each dwelling, but this way we're not receiving redundant information from individual owners. Each nightly rental on that application would need to have the same sales tax ID, obviously, and tied to the same owner's name and the name registered with the state. That was the first change, and then we just made a couple of different minor changes.
Chantel, can I, real quickly, is that okay?
Sure.
Because there was some confusion with some community members in regards to that last point, and that just wanted to have you clarify that there is a fee for each of those units, even though they get to put down 4 units on the page. Okay, because that was some confusion.
Yes, there is a fee for each different dwelling. We are just trying to streamline the process and have everything more clear and precise on the applications. The other things were the building codes and things like that. Those were already covered here at the city under the building code and Chapter 17 for the compliance stuff.
So that's like that section on compliance with zoning and street parking and landscaping.
I'm not sure how much discussion we need. I would entertain a motion.
I move to adopt the proposed ordinance 2019-08, amending certain provisions of Chapter 5.67 with the following amendment. 5.67.020, paragraph C. This is just some typos. Shall read, the first sentence shall read, C, 1 period. An individual owner who owns multiple nightly rental properties must obtain a separate license for each nightly rental property, comma, and may list up to 4 nightly rental property locations on one license application.
Thank you. Kaylin, is there a second?
I second.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Call for the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes 5-0. Thank you both so much. And I appreciate the deliberation of this council. We are at 10.3, Proposed Resolution 15, 2019, a resolution approving the Cottonwood Subdivision Plat B, Lot 1 amended, minor court subdivision, a minor subdivision of Lot 1 of the Cottonwood Subdivision, Plat B, located in the R2 single household and 2 household residential zone as referred to City Council by the Planning Commission. Summer's here to answer any question but not make any presentation. Is there a motion?
I can make a motion. I move to adopt Resolution 15-2019, approving the final plat for Cottonwood Subdivision Plat B, Lot 1, amended.
Second.
Thank you. Tawny, further discussion?
Seemed straightforward. Thank you for the
vote.
information in the
All
packet.
those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes 5-0. And then 10.4, Proposed Resolution 14, 2019, a resolution approving the final plat of the Creekside Townhomes subdivision on a property located at 545 Cane Creek Boulevard in the R3 multi-household residential zone and approving a subdivision improvements agreement for public improvements as favorably referred to council by the Planning Commission.
I move to adopt
Go ahead.
Resolution 14-2019, approving the final plat and subdivision improvement agreements for the Creekside Townhome subdivision.
Thank you. Kaylin?
Second.
Thank you, Tawny. Sorry about that. Deliberation. I just have a question about the sidewalk. It's a long stretch of sidewalk, and are they looking to do the payment in lieu?
So there are 2 separate sections that we've got a portion in front of their property that we know the location of where they need to go. They are installing those improvements. There's another portion of the property where we are planning a widening of Cane Creek Boulevard. They are paying that fee so that we can take the money and install those improvements when we do the widening rather than having them install them. We rip them out and we reinstall.
Cool.
And I did review it in terms of 12.08.060, which is that whole sidewalk exception things, and it appears compliant to me, to the code.
Okay, great. Just on a side note,
I just know
David,
that when that development is going to happen, people are going to be like, why weren't they required to do the sidewalk? So I just figured we'd put it out there. Sorry to
can you just remind us, because there's so many projects to keep track of, what was the idea with the widening of Cane Creek? Like, to the layperson, it looks like it's already a pretty wide street, and I couldn't remember if that had to do with aging infrastructure underneath or...
Yeah, there's going to be there's a couple of phases, I guess you could say, to this. We're going to do we're going to be bringing to you as part of the budget proposal funding to do the heavy maintenance, what's called the heavy maintenance project, and that'll be a pretty rigorous redoing of the surface of the street, but not getting into too many utilities underground for a while. That could be, that could be 5 years before that second effort happens, and that's it could be at least 5 years actually, because that will be when the south trunk line needs to get built, and we figure out how to get sewer infrastructure, in particular from the south, into the treatment plant along King Creek. So it's possible that the sidewalk improvements might not be in the heavy maintenance phase, but would be in the second, more in-depth phase.
So like that crosswalk we're talking about adding that will go over to Birch, which seems like it'll help a lot of people, that's pretty much surface, right? So that won't be impacted by this. It's striping, and any lighting is easy to, I assume,
There's some other drainage stuff further to the north that we'll be dealing with in the shorter term as well.
That was it. Yeah.
In your memo, you said, Summer, a crosswalk with pedestrian crossing lighting and signage will be placed at the cross street Birch Avenue. Will the developer be responsible for that?
They will.
Okay, because I didn't see the lighting in the construction docs.
I have just taken the construction drawings from the engineering department, and they've told me that those are the approved plans. I'm assuming that they've worked out the details with the developer's engineer.
Okay.
Okay, any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes 5-0. Thank you, Summer, for sticking around for that. And now we are moving into 10.5, discuss and scope and approach for developing a future land use plan with landmark design. Landmark, I know we're at 9:30. We were hoping to be at this point at 8 o'clock. Are you feeling good? Are we feeling good? Are we gonna fluff this up?
Whoa.
Future land use plan.
Got a little sweaty.
Yeah, let's take a couple of minutes because we've been sitting here for a little bit, and maybe we can just take a couple
Can we pay the bills before we do this presentation, and then that's out of the way?
Sure. All right, Kaylin, are you ready to do that? Approval of the bills?
Oh, sure. I can do the bills.
Okay, number 11, approval of the bills.
I move to pay the bills for the city of Moab for the period from February 12th to February 21st, 2019 in the amount of $511,734.97.
Thank you, Kaylin. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Karen.
Thank you, Kaylin.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Aye, thank you.
Opposed? Okay, so that motion passed 5-0. I didn't hear your aye.
Oh, aye, sorry, I was distracted by candy.
Yes, okay, 1 minute. I just have to use the phone.
You like some Pockies cookies?
I would like that once I come back from the
Are those sparklers?
Those are Pocky.
We could light them, but it might get messy. We find out.
I didn't even know these things existed until they showed up in the house.
Oh, these are Pocky.
Are they popular?
We love these.
Yeah, they're pretty. Oh, thank you, Mike. Appreciate it.
They're chocolate coated.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
They come in strawberry and vanilla. Probably it's not a balanced dinner.
Wow, it's a good thing we started at 4:30.
Poor David gets the dread.
So FLUP is Future Land Use Plan.
Thanks, Ronnie.
And so I meant, let's pump it up, is what I was referring to when I said FLUP it. I wasn't trying to be crass. So, welcome. Please introduce yourself.
Thank you. My name is Mark Vlasic. I'm the president and owner of Landmark Design. We're a planning and landscape architecture firm in Salt Lake City. We have a staff of 8 people. We're all landscape architects, and a few of us are planners. We do about 50% of our work is design and planning, and we do a wide range, everything from community master plans, comprehensive plans, down to detailed design studies. We're doing a couple of small studies for you right now for Center Street, East and West, and just last year worked on a project, an infrastructure project on 100 South, part of your stormwater drainage project.
And also a project you did San Juan County's.
Right. That's been a focus this last year with all the impact or push of growth throughout the region. We actually designed 2 other similar projects in Tooele County, one which has been adopted, the other one which is going through. So that's a new thing that we haven't done much before, of sort of new community design, but it's indicative of what's happening both statewide and regionally. A lot of, and what we're seeing here in Moab.
Sorry, I missed it. What did you do for San Juan County?
We designed the Spanish Valley Master Plan.
Okay, thanks.
Which has been, the plan has been adopted. We are hoping to get the ordinances adopted in next month, and the first phase of development is going up for approval at the same meeting.
How big is that?
It's about 10 square miles, and it's the entire Spanish Valley in San Juan County.
Mm-hmm.
The bulk of it is on Sitla land. So we planned for both the private properties and for the Sitla properties. So it basically includes everything, including Kens Lake, all the way to the end of the valley.
So how many homes and businesses are you talking about?
It depends on how much water is going to be available ultimately, but it's projected to be about 15,000 people, about twice the population of Moab.
And Mark, this first phase that is getting approved, how large is that?
It's about a half of it, so it's the bulk of the residential use, so I would think that it's probably in the range of about 7,000 people.
Right.
If there's water, and if there's other things that, it's a 40 to 50 year plan is what's, Sitla's not looking to develop it overnight, but they do want to get it down on paper that they have rights for development.